Students at Columbia University are starting class today amid backlash from the school's report on anti-Semitism. The report from the Task Force on Anti-Semitism says the school failed to stop hate and violence against Jewish students on campus during pro-Palestinian protests. The school is now under new leadership after the former president, Manoush Shafik, resigned last month after months of college protests over the Israel-Hamas war. Executive Director of Jews for Racial and Economic Justice and Columbia alumni, Audrey Sassoon, joins me now for more. Audrey, thank you for coming on. I want to ask about this task force because these were faculty members interviewing nearly 500 students, and they found Jewish students said they were threatened, attacked, shunned, and harassed on campus during those protests. So what do you make of those findings, and what stood out to you most from this report?
Yes, thank you for having me. I would say, first of all, I would just step back and just define anti-Semitism. The report has a working definition of anti-Semitism, and I want to just state for the record, anti-Semitism is, in fact, discrimination, prejudice, hostility, or violence against Jews as Jews or Jewish institutions as Jewish. And a lot of what I read in that report, much of it qualifies as that. There is harassment and there is intimidation and there are incidents that should be concerning. That said, one of what the big takeaway I have from this report and the whole approach of this task force is that one thing we know at Jews for Racial and Economic Justice and that we have been organizing around is that when we isolate anti-Semitism from other forms of bigotry, we actually don't make Jews any safer. So I read the report and I feel for the students on campus right now. This is an incredibly difficult time. And students are experiencing a range of emotions. But what we could and should be doing to make all students feel safer on campus is actually convening a task force for harassment and discrimination against all students. That includes anti-Palestinian, that includes anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, anti-Black. When we fight all of them together, we have a much better understanding of how these systems operate and how they're manifesting on campus.
And Audrey, you were working on campus last semester when these pro-Palestinian encampments started. What was the climate like for students then?
To be clear, JFREG supported the student protesters' right to protest, and we had some members of our organization. We organized Jewish New Yorkers to build a New York where we all have the freedom to thrive, and so we had members who were protesting and who were on campus, and we supported as a whole the movement for the freedom of speech of students and the tradition in which students were participating to speak out against injustice. This was the climate on campuses was fraught. It was difficult. I think this is a moment when people's long-held beliefs and ideologies are being challenged actively and in real time. And the wider global context is that there is a genocide and mass atrocities and war crimes happening in Gaza and now in the West Bank, as we see. And so what I'm concerned about with this report is we're going back onto campuses now. 3 months later, students were trying to speak out and be a part of a movement for justice, and they're now being told, I think with this task force and with these recommendations, ultimately that there's some muddy definitions in this task force report about what is and isn't anti-Semitism, and it is perfectly legitimate to speak out against the actions of the state of Israel. And so when you conflate those things, I think we're going to have a real problem of free speech on campus coming up this fall.
So, Audrey, students are heading back to school today there. The university's interim president released a statement acknowledging harm done by anti-Semitism on campus and pledged to make changes. So what kind of changes do you think the university should make? And how do you think you handle situations like this going forward, acknowledging the two things you just pointed out, right? That you believe people need this freedom of speech, this ability to protest against what's happening with the Israeli government in Gaza if people feel that they are against the way that's being handled, without then also actually threatening and jeopardizing the safety or security of Jewish students on campus?
Yes, I think, first of all, they need to be looking at the experiences of all the students. So to be clear, I think anti-Semitism is real, it is dangerous, and it is happening. I think there have been more studies done that show that actually the overlap between hostility towards Zionism and hostility towards Jews is not actually what this report makes seem. So there's a new Brandeis report about this. And so I think that they need to be much better about teasing out. One of the ways in which anti-Semitism has been used in this current political climate has been as a political cudgel. As a cudgel, they're muddying the waters about what isn't anti-Semitism. And this fight about defining anti-Semitism has made it very hard for people to express themselves freely. And while also ensuring that all students feel safe and secure on campus. Everyone needs to be doing that. I do think Jewish students need more support to wrestle with the big feelings and the big experiences that they're having. I don't think they have been prepared, and I think we can say a lot more about that and why that is, in terms of how how our major institutions, Jewish institutions, have prepared or not prepared Jewish students for this moment. But I think it is also the case that I read many incidents in there where I wondered, on the one hand, where I was like, that is unacceptable, and others where I wondered, what is the rest of the story here, and what was the experience of the student? What happened? What happened to the Palestinian student in this situation? What happened to the protester in this situation? Like what else is going on? And I think the university has a responsibility to look at the full picture. And so I think that's one of the things that I would argue, and they need to create a task force on harassment against all students, not just Jews. That is what will make Jews safer. We know that. It is what makes all of us safer.
All right, Executive Director of Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, Audrey Sasson. Audrey, thank you.